I've always been a pretty decently big fan of Coen Brothers movies, and I've always been a really big fan of movies within movies. Singing in the Rain would be a prime example of that because it's a movie about the making of another movie, and I always find those topics really interesting. So when I heard that the Coen Brothers were doing a kind of movie like this, I was hooked because Coen Brothers have made some of my favorite movies ever, like True Grit. They made 2013's Inside Llewyn Davis, which is one of my favorite movies of that year. No Country for Old Men, The Big Lebowski, Fargo. The list goes on. They've made a bunch of really, really incredible films. So I really liked that they were tackling this type of genre. And the cast was phenomenal. I heard Scarlett Johansson, George Clooney, Josh Brolin, Tilda Swinton, Jonah Hill. So that already had me hooked from the start, and I was really, really eager to see this movie. But it kind of slipped under the radar. We were going to do an episode on it, but unfortunately, it really wasn't playing in any theaters by us, which was really, really unfortunate because the Coen Brothers, I really do think, have that kind of appeal to where they can go to a wider audience and wider area filled with theaters and stuff like that. But unfortunately, this one didn't come around. So, and I know it's like 12 months later, but I finally got around to seeing it because it just got added on HBO Go. So I watched it, and I have to say that I kind of enjoyed this movie. I really had a good time while watching it. There are a couple gripes that I have with the movie, but for the most part, the positives definitely outweighed the negatives. So to start with the positives, I mean, everybody in this movie gives a phenomenal performance, I think. Josh Brolin brings his A game. George Clooney's phenomenal. And that's kind of one of my problems with this movie. It's just that Josh Brolin and George Clooney are both phenomenal in this movie. It's just there's so many A-list actors in this movie that their characters, and they're in it for like less than 3 minutes. I mean, Scarlett Johansson doesn't have more than 3 minutes of screen time. Neither does Jonah Hill. Channing Tatum has a little bit more, but it doesn't really serve a purpose, I guess, in a sense. I mean, he definitely has a purpose. It's just that he doesn't really offer anything to the movie, I would say. And I don't know. It's just Tilda Swinton really wasn't in a lot either, and I love her. She's one of my favorite actresses, and it's really a shame because all of this talent feels wasted in a sense, and that's kind of disappointing. But going back to Josh Brolin and George Clooney, they both give great performances. Josh Brolin plays a very like stoic, serious man, but he plays it in such a way that his stoicism and his seriousness give off like a comedic vibe. So he's very, very funny in this movie. He has some phenomenal lines, and it's really a lot of body comedy, I would say, not like slapstick, but like kind of just like in his mannerisms and stuff like that. I think he plays a really well-adjusted, well-written character. George Clooney has some amazing lines in this movie too. He plays kind of like a Robert Taylor, Charlton Heston type character because this movie takes place in like the 50s, so that was really their heyday in a sense. And he gives a great performance, really emulating those types of actors back then. And what this movie does very, very well is really captures the sense of the 1950s and like early 50s, late 40s type filmmaking. And that's not really something that we see in movies a lot nowadays, which is really kind of a shame because that was a very, very interesting time period in filmmaking. And, just the way that actors and actresses conducted themselves, directors conducted themselves. And Josh Brolin plays like a fixer who like fixes all of like the scandals and stuff like that. And that was a very big part of filmmaking. Like even today, like all the scandals and stuff like that. But in the 50s, like everybody tried to maintain like that wholesome image, like you couldn't have a child while you were married. You had to like conduct yourself, not do drugs, not do like all that hard stuff, and you just have to conduct yourself in a very very like clean, well-dressed manner. But none of like the big name actors and actresses did that. They just did whatever they wanted, and it was Josh Brolin's job to fix all that and spin the headlines and whatnot. But yeah, and that was a really cool aspect that I really liked about this movie. The set design is phenomenal. You have all the old cars. Costume design was great too. You had all those nice lapel suits and stuff like that, and just regular suits and 50s like shoes, like the hats. You had the fedoras and stuff like that. And it's just a nice little attention to detail. Set design was nice. You had like all like vintage signs and like vintage movie posters where like the characters' heads are like really enlarged on the screen. You had like that nice bubble font or whatever. It was just really cool. It was a lot of really nice details sprinkled in throughout the movie that really gave off the sense that this was in the 50s. And so when going to gripes, one of the main things that I really didn't like about this movie is just that, like what I said before, is like most of these A-list actors are just reduced to cameos and they don't really add anything to the story. This movie kind of just like is like a couple just moments just thrown together into a scene, like one long scene, I would say. It's just, it doesn't really, it's like, to explain it, I guess it just doesn't really feel like a cohesive whole in a sense. It feels like a bunch of film stock taped together to make really compelling moments, but not a cohesive movie. There's a lot more style than substance, I would say. And that's really accentuated by, again, these lack of characters, and all of these characters being kind of one-dimensional. You know, Josh Brolin kind of has a little bit of character development, and so does George Clooney, and so does Alden Ehrenreich, who was also great in this movie. He plays like a young up-and-comer movie star. And all three of those guys kind of get like a decent amount of character development, I would say, but it's just that they don't really have enough. They're not really dynamic. They all kind of inhabit the same personality throughout the movie. They don't really go through like any major change or anything. And they all just kind of inhabit their own personalities throughout the entirety of the movie. And maybe that's just like a reference to like how maybe a lot of 50s movies like did that, like a kind of like a lot of 50s movies just like churned out movies and just to make a profit. And they didn't really have much character development. Maybe that was a reference to that, but if it was, I mean, good on them, but like it didn't really add anything to the movie, I would say. It kind of detracted from it, and as a matter of fact. But one other thing that I really liked about the movie was the writing. The writing was phenomenal. Definitely the best part about this movie. A lot of really great quips, a lot of like Coen Brother isms sprinkled throughout there. George Clooney had some phenomenal lines. Josh Brolin had some very good lines as well. And really, for the most part, every character had top-notch writing. There really wasn't any like cheesy or like eye-rolling dialogue in there at all. It was just a very, it just all felt very natural. Like everybody was just having a conversation, and you were just eavesdropping on said conversation. It was really, really cool to see that amount of detail put into the writing. The cinematography was pretty good as well. It's shot by Roger Deakins, so I'm obviously gonna like jerk it off a little bit, but Roger Deakins is the best living cinematographer these days, and really anything he touches is just immaculate. And it just goes to show with this movie as well. There's a lot of very, very, very good shots in this movie. I love the way the musical number with Channing Tatum was filmed. It really felt like a Singing in the Rain type feel, and a lot of great lighting choices as well. There's this one shot with Josh Brolin walking up, and there's the three crosses, because the movie within the movie is Hail Caesar, so it's about like the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, but also it's about Caesar. And there's this one part where Josh Brolin walks onto the set of the film, and he sees the three crosses that were at Jesus' crucifixion, and the light on them casts a shadow on Josh Brolin's entire body, and it accentuates the crosses and stuff like that. I'm not really like super religious, but it was just a really good shot. It's just a phenomenal shot. And there are other really good ones as well. Like there's a lot of shots of Josh Brolin. The shots of Josh Brolin in the confessional booth with the priest were all very nicely filmed, and they really gave a sense of like claustrophobia, because Josh Brolin plays like a very stressed out character, and he always has like the pressures of his job weighing down on him. So I think that was really nicely accentuated within the visual narrative of him sitting in the confessional booth. Other than that, there's nothing really I have else to say about this movie. I mean, the music was good. It's just that the lack of substance and the lack of all these characters really contributing anything to the story, and a real like lack of character development really kind of dragged the movie down a little bit. It didn't ruin it or anything. It was kind of disappointing. And my final statement is just, it was kind of disappointing. Because there's a lot of wasted potential and a lot of wasted talent in this movie. I'm going to give the movie like a 7.5 out of 10. I really did enjoy the writing. I really did enjoy the movie overall. I just wish that all these characters were given more substance, and that it just felt like more of a cohesive whole rather than a bunch of scenes stitched together within without a cohesive whole. So, That's all I got to say about this movie. Thanks for watching, everybody.